years ago, my mom, she came to help me. I had a newborn, and my parents at the time lived in Trinidad. So I live in Brampton, Ontario. And so my mother came to help me with my son because it was her third grandchild. And my mom, being a registered nurse, I thought my son was in capable hands. However, just after a few days, I just noticed that certain things she wasn't doing the same, and things that she would know, like mixing formula, she wouldn't know how to mix a formula, like follow basic instructions. So I took her to the doctor, and I just want to, I guess to just back up, the reason why I did write the book is because just for that reason, 15 years ago, there was not very much information about Alzheimer's. Nobody really knew anything about it, and being part of the sandwich generation, there was definitely nothing for me. I was 30 years old at the time. I'm 45 now, and I couldn't find basic information regarding how to balance my life, because I was working, having a newborn, and this disease that there was not much awareness about. So I'm just going to read. I took you back to that point in time, so I'm going to read you an excerpt. We went to the doctor, and he gave my mother a mini mental exam. I saw her struggle with the simple questions. At the end of the exam, I saw her struggle with the simple questions. At the end of the exam, the doctor checked his chart and simply stated, "You have Alzheimer's." That is it. Not even a buffer question like, have you been having problems with your memory, or has there been anything traumatic in your life, a death or an illness of a relative? Nothing. He just said, "You have Alzheimer's." And then he looked at me and said, "Things are going to change." I heard the semblance of a CAT scan and a piece of paper, also a prescription for Aricept, and he will get back to me with this new, and I use the term loosely, drug called Reminol. I remember being numb. I remember walking out of there with my mother, not really understanding what was happening. And here I am at 30 years of age with a newborn and a mother who has this thing called Alzheimer's. I didn't even really know what it was. At the time, I just remember nodding and saying and thinking everything's going to be okay, and maybe it wasn't so serious. But when I got home, I looked Alzheimer's up on the internet, and when I read "no cure," I started to get scared. No cure? What are they talking about? It also was heard. I heard my mom weeping, and because she was in disbelief, she kept saying, "Who has this Alzheimer's disease?" So basically, that's how I found out about Alzheimer's. I had to look it up on the internet, and the doctor didn't really tell me what to expect. He just said it's like things are going to change, which helped me write this book because it was cathartic for me. And along the way, I looked up resources for myself so I could help other people who were probably going to go through the same thing. It's not going forward. Oh, here, I'll just use this. So, like I said, this is exactly what you can expect when you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, that it's inevitable, your life is going to change. Especially, my mom still resides with me. It's 15 years later, and she's had the disease this long, and she's in the last stages. I use these two slides to kind of demonstrate that this is exactly probably how an Alzheimer patient feels. Like your memories are being stripped away from you. You can't remember simple things. You get confused. And don't take offense, but they say doctors are the worst patients, but so are nurses. So she knew what was happening, so it was a lot of denial. Like she wouldn't express like the symptoms she was feeling. So it made it even more difficult to talk to her about, well, what can we do to help you? Because she was in denial that she didn't have this disease, and I couldn't really talk about it around her. So this is what I was talking about being in this, oh, it's just jumping forward, I'm sorry. About being in the sandwich generation is that it makes it even doubly harder to manage both your newborn or your child and then looking after an aged parent, because 14 months later my father passed away from a massive heart attack, so I was literally the primary caregiver. During the book, I battle back and forth through the stages of Kubler-Ross's grief, and this is a better chart to explain that you're never really in one or the other. It's always an encompassing circle that you go back and forth with bargaining, denial, anger, but it's only until, and it took me a long time, and probably 13 years, where you get to the acceptance stage, where you're just, you just have to accept that this is how your life is. And it takes a long time to get to that stage, because it's a roller coaster of, like they say that Alzheimer's goes through stages, but it does, but it could go through that in one day. Like, you never know what you're going to get. And my mom was diagnosed with atypical Alzheimer's, so she wasn't really following the natural course of stages. Okay, 1 second. I just want to show you a clip because I was asked, this was in January as part of the Alzheimer campaign. They did a clip on my caregiving, and I'd like to show that now, if it will connect.
Cannonball! Lines to Go's summer celebration sale is going on now. Make a splash with new sunshades, cascade shades, basswood, and more, all at 20 to 35% off. It's the hottest sale of the year, just when you need to cool off most. Lines to Go, lines for life.
You're looking into the lonely life of a caregiver. 45-year-old Caron Leid, tending to her mother, who has Alzheimer's.
I basically indirectly gave up 14 years of my life. It's very difficult.
Her mother, Marlene, was diagnosed at age 57. When she was widowed, all the caregiving fell to her only daughter. But Caron herself works full-time and has a son. Despite daily help from a support worker, she's still on call 24/7.
You need a team when you're dealing with this. It cannot fall on one person. It's too much. And I think I do have burnout right now.
They're both part of a sad trend. 72% of Alzheimer's patients across Canada are now women, since they live longer than men, putting them at greater risk. And surprisingly, 70% of those caring for them are women too. A new reality, says the Alzheimer's Society.
When my mother started to show signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, guess who my father called? Not my brother, me.
Caron herself is now at high risk of dementia because of her family history and the stress of caregiving.
I was supposed to go to the memory disorder clinic, and I don't want to go to do the test just because I don't really want to know.
But she's turned her mother's story into a book, What They Forget to Tell You About Alzheimer's, filled with advice for other caregivers on the same lonely road. This isn't a story with a solution because there is no cure for dementia, but the hope is that by painting this picture, there will be more funding for research and support for the countless women on the front line. Avis Favreau, CTV News, Toronto.
just brings me back to the fact that, like I said, there has to be more awareness, and especially considering the disease now is affecting younger people. I think the last report was somebody in their 40s, so which means that the caregiving is obviously getting, the people who have to care for Alzheimer patients are now younger and younger. And there's really not enough awareness. Like, yes, now they're coming out with movies like Still Alice, and people still don't know. The average person doesn't know that the cognitive decline actually, like my mom forgot how to walk. She doesn't know how to walk anymore, so she's wheelchair bound. And they don't realize that it's degenerative, so it will obviously progress to, death, when you forget how to chew or swallow. People just think, oh, you just don't remember. They don't really know. People still call it old-timers disease. It's, and because usually the campaign is a lot of elderly people, and I struggled with even day programs for my mom. I struggled with caring, like just balancing a job and caregiving for my parent. And there's not enough awareness about this disease, so I'm just hoping that conferences like this, my book, movies, that we can build some sort of awareness for the disease, because it's much needed, and it's going to affect, as we know with the stats, it's like going to affect everybody indirectly in some form. I just want to thank you for your time.